and gentlemen, welcome to Regrettable Tales and Redemptive Music, the last Gasp 2016. Sex and other highly personal matters.
You knew you were sticking around for the sex part, right? It's like, it's late at night. It's time for sex stories. Okay.
Listen closely.
Sam, a leading expert in the field of nanoacoustics, had labored for 5 years to perfect what, in effect, was the world's smallest and most sensitive microphone. And today, for the first time, he would focus it upon a petri dish with the hope of listening in on bacteria. What he heard was what every E. coli in town seemed to know already, that his wife Elaine was carrying on an affair with his research assistant, Henry. They're very clever, those E. coli.
Dawning.
Jack flipped the light switch, and before the lamp could extinguish time, despite the universal law that governs it, paused just long enough for him to realize that Melanie's friend Sam, with whom she was spending another weekend away, didn't seem all that gay.
Good plan.
Millicent's favorite restaurant, more than a bit too expensive, a table on the patio where she could be serenaded by the gently overlapping breakers. Her favorite bottle of champagne, served just as she liked it, a bit too chilled, and a dozen Blue Point oysters from Long Island Sound, as gentle as her smile. It was their anniversary, and next year, Claude mused, he might bring her along.
TMI.
And so, as I have shown, Dr. Sapperly had taken my research grants, stolen my lab and my team. I could not sit idly by as he wooed my wife, and in any case, given his much lauded and much plagiarized papers on bovine digestion, dissolving him in that vat of bile was nothing if not fitting. As surprising as Dr. Nieder's confession to murder was, it was an even more unexpected TED Talk.
The look of love.
Celine preferred men whose faces betrayed some history, as long as that history didn't include a plague, as his unfortunately did. His mannerisms and fashion sense were also corrupt, having originated in a dystopian mirror universe where all the gentlemen had sadly died. She decided to sleep with him anyway, as he was nonetheless her husband, and it was their 15th anniversary.
To each.
Johann described to Emma, in refreshingly few words, the basics of particle physics. She told him that she was not wearing any underwear.
Overqualified.
When he searched online for tips on brain foods, the only result was, "Thou sodden-witted lardass, thou hast no more brain than I have in mine elbows." In planning his Italian countryside vacation, Sean searched Travelocity.com for competitive airline rates. The answer, however, wasn't in the form of a price at all, but, "Whither thou goest, you moldy schmuck, and with whom?" An online chat with a lady friend was summarily interrupted with, "There's no more faith in thee than in a stewed prune, and you're an a-hole, by the way." He decided to reach out to his estranged wife, Theda, who, as a computer analyst with the NSA and amateur Shakespearean scholar, she seemed uniquely qualified to help him get to the bottom of his online privacy problem. She'll fix him.
Personal preferences.
With his free hand, Charlie tapped in the characters of his personal entry and hit send. Single white male, 32, with gun in mouth, seeks gal to pull the trigger. Blonde, single white female, 18 to 24, petite but shapely, preferred Jennifer Aniston type. No smokers, drugs, drinking, fatties, skinnies, religious types, hippies, emos, yoga or goth chicks, hang-ups, or baggage.
Well, red.
Henry was Tina's World Book Encyclopedia, a hulking, anachronistic, pedantic, know-it-all waste of space with nothing whatsoever new to say. For Henry, Tina was a book of self-published poems, thin, cheap, unedited, pretentious, and sadly eager to share its unoriginal insights. That they had found themselves next to one another on life's shelf gathering dust was, as fate would have it, hardly a coincidence.
Under her spell.
Oh, Jenny, what was it that drew me to you? What was it that put me under your spell? What was it that has kept me here with you, lo, these many years? And then Lawrence remembered in just that order: the misleading Craigslist ad, the drugged cocktail, and the filthy cage in Jenny's basement.
Overexposures.
Whilst reviewing landscape photos on the Nikon, Francis found his skillfully captured gorges, fens, bluffs, and steppes, but also images of what were photos unfamiliar, forgotten, likely of sun-bleached outcroppings. Vexingly, they were distorted, blurry, not like his at all, and resembling nothing so much as waggling male genitalia. Flummoxed, he asked his wife Elaine if she had experienced similar problems with the camera when she had recently borrowed it. She has to learn how to focus though, right? Like learn how to use it, right? Okay.
Prone.
Elian had lost his first wife Esther in Indonesia to the ravages of the 2004 tsunami. In 2011, near Tuscaloosa, his second wife, Marvella, met her fate in the hideous swirl of the great tornado. Now, with searing lava flow bearing down on the little Hawaiian village of Pahoa, Ilian feared for the life of his third wife, Trish. He also feared that he might not have enough frequent flyer miles to take her there. Plan ahead, right?
Remote chance.
A pigeon flew in through the family room window, lighted upon the remote, pecking on the television remote, and then hopping up into the popcorn bowl, where he nestled and fed upon unpopped kernels. It was hard, thought Jim, seated nearby in the lounger, not to anthropomorphize when you see something like that. The following July, that same bird subsequently wooed and flew off with Jim's wife, Annabelle. That's a clever bird.
Homebody.
Douglas rose to bathe his precious and to brush her hair, daub on her makeup, and to wriggle her into her prettiest dress. While the object of his love was less real than realistic, his devotion and dedication to her needs was nonetheless authentic. How strange it was then that he began to sense that Diane was losing interest in him, that she was about to leave. He deflated her and left her shoes off, just in case. It's hard to get around like that, right?
Medicated.
Dr. Ebersol had come into the possession of an unidentified dried plant, used both medicinally and ceremonially by an isolated Amazonian peoples. A plant which, in the unselfish interest of science, he intended to test on himself and his laboratory assistant Hillary at a nearby motel, preferably one with HBO and a hot tub.
New rules.
Listen carefully, as choices have changed. Benjamin, used to being rebuffed, was nonetheless thrown by his wife Hillary's newest response to his request for sex. I want to hear those new choices.
Remote chance.
Reggie failed unerringly when it came to performing everyday acts, but excelled at those which required daring or heroism. This imbalance led to his wife's attempt to motivate him by placing explosives on the garbage bins, which needed to be dragged from the street back into the garage by 9 a.m., where a key hanging on a chain would defuse them. Sadly, Mona had forgotten to motivate Reggie to repair the faulty garage door opener.
What nerve.
Kylie hated the languages and food of other cultures and was not afraid to let anyone know about it. He hoped, in fact, to share his point of view with supermodel Helga Lunas and to let her know that he could never tolerate her consuming sushi or even ordering it in his presence. Kyle's plan to use a wingsuit to fly onto her apartment's terrace from the vantage point of a nearby office tower to deliver his message was thwarted, however, by his fears of heights, wingsuits, flying, office towers, and supermodels.
Search engine.
Searching for a high-back chair, she instead ended up with a low-life boyfriend. In the future, Sheila would have to exercise greater caution when Googling.
Who was?
Their small cabinet of better liquors had matured into closet shelves chock-a-block with plastic half-gallons of no-name vodka, and the gourmet recipes they had prepared together had devolved into a limited selection of pre-battered foodstuffs in portrait boxes that took turns riding the carousel in their sparklingly greasy microwave. When Gloria passed away while watching Jeopardy! Larry did not immediately notice, presuming, for the first few hours, that she was merely stumped.
One for the road.
Mona was a glass-half-empty gal, and her husband Bob was decidedly glass-half-full. She had recently begun an affair with Pete, whom she met through friends at work, and he didn't even know there was a glass.
Too good.
Handsome and charming, Lillian wanted to know why Zane was still single, so she surprised herself and asked him outright. I guess it's because the other women I have dated weren't lucky. At his apartment and under his cheeky spell, she acquiesced to putting on a silk blindfold. A moment after that, she felt something on her head. A moment after that, she heard the gun cock. I hope she's lucky.
What matters?
Just what is it that Johann had seen in her best friend Helena? What made him cheat, and why did she go along? Gloria, coolly scientific, had, as a physicist at CERN, access to the Large Hadron Super Collider, and would do the only logical thing. She would drug and then attempt to send Johann and Helena on opposing trajectories around the 17-mile ring at just under the speed of light, hoping that their collision would throw off particles which might lead to a deeper understanding of their infidelity.
Was about time.
What in God's name have you done to yourself? On a brighter note, Charlene's husband Phil had at least noticed her new hairdo.
Abandoned.
It took some time, but in due course, Christopher had begun to make love to his neighbor Glynis. After all, his wife Miriam had gone. To buy groceries, as it turns out.
Final exam.
Dr. Marla, her patients all called her that, stretched on a pair of gloves for a routine prostate exam on Mr. Osterman. While probing, she felt an unfamiliar tightness, which upon steady pressure encompassed her finger entirely. Upon retracting, she found a clotto ring encircling her lubricated digit just above the knuckle. Dr. Marla stared cross-eyed at her raised finger with its curious prize and at her blushing admirer. So I had alternatively called that story Surprise Inside. I don't know which one I like better. I think I should invite you all home to help name the stories.
Mismatch.
The stars were playfully popping in and out of phase. The ocean waves broke with the sound of cupped hands being brought together, and Neil was the kind of guy who said hello to everyone he met and who would still open a door for a lady. While Donna was the kind of girl who hid razor blades in her body cavities and didn't take shit from anybody. This was their night for love.
Drug war.
Although admitting that she was not listed by name, Sean nonetheless insisted that young Heloise was a side effect of his addiction to Viagra. His wife Marie, for just one precious second distracted by this notion, loosened her grip on the baseball bat, thus allowing him to dash clumsily past her, pants round his calves, to the motel's parking lot. The side effect was left behind to fend for herself.
Boning up.
Okay, come on. Inez had been obsessing upon internet health sites and was left convinced that walking barefoot would cause pattern baldness in women. Her far more sober husband Jeremy chided her, but having done his own web research, discovered that the male organ could become enlarged as a side effect of lengthy rides in elevators. Who knew? He texted her from the observation tower of the Empire State Building in hopes that she would meet him there. He asked that she not take the stairs barefooted, just in case.
Typecast.
Thus far, in her attempt to net a bad boy, Jeanette had only succeeded in attracting a bad-smelling boy, and then a boy with bad depth perception, who, after misjudging a curb and being hit by a bus, was now in very bad shape.
Collateral damage.
Every man at the Chamberlain High 30th reunion wanted to get into Lorraine's pants, which were tight and already crowded with preternaturally youthful bulges and divots. When she arrived home from the evening's worth of being ogled, she poured herself a glass of Pinot Grigio and began to undress. Mid-disrobement, her Spanx sprang off, which struck and killed her only true friend, her cat, Mr. Flex.
A few words.
You had me at, get in the trunk right now or I'll shoot you here.
Two-bit.
Bobby, Sue, and Cooter had gotten to the point in their marriage where they were sick of one another. Well, at least they thought they were sick of one another. The symptoms of their romantic hypochondria continued unabated until Cooter was bitten by a rattlesnake. And as luck would have it, Charlene, a herpetologist in fortuitous earshot of his yelp, sucked the poison out. Due to the intimate sight of the injury, she and Cooter formed an understandable bond, and finally, Bobby, Sue, and Cooter had something real to worry about. Despite of, or in part due to, the snake incident and ensuing tryst, Bobby, Sue, and Cooter in time rekindled their love. They took off for a romantic weekend at Sacandaga Lake. Bobby Sue let Charlene come along, just in case, with a rattler.
Here now.
Teresa could be forgiven due to the clamorous throng at the concert's intermission for mishearing handsome stranger Robert, thinking he had either said, I am with the aging Philharmonic but have plans. Or that playing had been bucolic but bland. In either case, she found him quite charming and decided to have another and then another drink with him. What he had actually confessed was, I am a raging alcoholic with fast hands, which, as the evening progressed, she discovered for herself to be very true.
An improvement.
Simon thought that his wife Cecily was very hot. She, on the other hand, thought that while she had once possessed hotness, that she had aged out of it. She harped on her lapsed beauty a great deal until one day Simon, ever dutiful, no longer found her hot either. In time, a windfall in the form of an inheritance allowed Cecily to indulge in her reconstructive rehotting, and it worked, if only for her sake. Simon congratulated this nearly unrecognizable woman on her improvements before moving in with her manicurist, Zena.
Call me.
Aput, Kana, Pikpaiksirpok, and Limuksuk. Young Pukinagak's people had so many words describing snow, and yet for her husband Uglu, who was too lazy to shovel any, she could only think of one.
I declare.
Pensively buttoned pocket lids pricked up at the edges and amplified every move of the custom officer's tightly indigo-clad buttocks. Getting hot yet? I'm getting hot. Okay. A jangle of keys suggestively blossomed from one hip, while a knowingly dented leather container adorned the other, both slung from a tilting, glossily worn black belt. She wanted to inspect his luggage, but Larry wanted to inspect her. Before the day was over, one way or another, he expected to find himself in handcuffs.
Barely there.
After many weeks of pursuit, there was Katerina, completely nude and standing before Matt, who took her in inch by goose-bumped inch and smiled. She smiled in shy return. He retrieved his notebook and pen from the nightstand. She bit her lip and blushed, spinning on dainty feet, coquettish from one pin-up girl pose to another. He lowered his head and wrote, under her carefully penned name and email address, definitely a clothing body. Having satisfied his curiosity, he closed his notebook, rose from the bedside armchair, and in a technical tone simply said, "You can leave now." Katerina didn't seem to have listened at all, and still quite naked, she briskly grabbed and brandished the motel room stick lamp, whipping its cord from the socket. She barred his exit with a warrior's stance.
His move.
Beatrice had decided to remain motionless for 3 days in an attempt to deceive Frederick into thinking that she was dead. Strangely, his daily behavior changed little, despite the apparently alarming circumstances, with the notable exception, of course, of his receiving lengthy nocturnal visits from his co-worker Emily.
Toy lift.
In 1915, Sir Reginald Smiths would take on his fated Mount Kilimanjaro expedition various mechanical devices engineered to, among other things, measure the Earth's mass by determining that of the mountains. It was while hauling the last of his crates containing a particularly weighty apparatus to the summit that he, his guide, and 2 of his trusted bearers fell to their deaths. A century later, their bodies were discovered in a ravine exposed by an early thaw. And along with their well-preserved remains lay the final crate, split open to reveal a machine operated by coin, which dispensed lewd postcards and vulcanized rubber personal amusements. You never know what you're going to need up there. You never know.
Selfie?
Strike anywhere matches, a can of gas, a once overstuffed, now smoldering chair with its morbid contents, and facing it, a tripod with mounted video camera. Hubert's desperate attempt at getting Margot's attention had culminated in today's short-lived and, since the camera had not even been set to record, pathetic demonstration.
Over there.
Don't go there, Gigi had said. Norman never got to go there. Still, he dreamed of there, its people, customs, weather, architecture, and geography. She went there as often as she wanted, it turns out. And he, her lover for 4 years, had apparently never even gotten a postcard from there.
Reap and sow?
So, you spend all summer long out there somewhere doing God knows what, and then this shit happens? Jacob's wife Heather, a woman born and raised in the capital, had many ways which were strange to him, but none stranger than her description of this year's harvest.
Please guess.
It may be impossible, given current technologies, to count something precisely, as in the number of stars in the firmament or grains of sand in the Sahara. But that doesn't mean, of course, that there's a never-ending or infinite amount of stars and sand. A sober, scientific, and earnest but unsettlingly vague response from Denise, who simply could not give a straight answer to Pete when he asked if she remembered how many lovers she had had before meeting him. Ouch.
Mystery of love.
Ben had a Samsung. Ida had an iPhone. He had a German car, she a Japanese one. He cherished his privacy, she adored Facebook. He liked Springsteen, and she had a growth on the back of her head, the size and consistency of a rotten grapefruit, which implanted thoughts of indiscriminate killing in her brain. It's a wonder how anybody stays together anymore. Thank you, everybody. Let's hear it for DJ Truemaster and our beautiful projectionist, Persephone Palm.
Friends and family, please give it up one more time for Rich. Love Rich.